None.
The one time they actually raised the capital gains tax, the revenues fell by $50 billion.
Well, that might happen, or it might not.
In fact, the biggest single thing that Bill Clinton did to balance the federal budget was to cut the capital gains tax.
According to the Wall Street Journal, the IRS reported that in 2005, 47% of all tax returns that reported capital gains came from households with incomes under $50,000. If you include households with incomes under $100,000, 79% of all 2005 tax returns reported capital gains. So, under President Obama, 3/4 of households would have their capital gains taxes double.
He has such a disdain for the wealthy class and people who create wealth and entrepreneurs in this country. He seems to think in order to help the poor, you got to take from the so-called rich. But what he doesn't understand, it is a small business owner in this country with 4 or 5 employees that is the backbone of this country, that need tax breaks, that need the capital gains breaks.
Why would you penalize 100 million investors in the market? Why would you penalize all those men and women who've taken a risk to start a business and to succeed? Why would you penalize them? Senator Obama has said that he would increase the rate of tax on capital gains from 15% to 28%. That would nearly double it. That's a massive disincentive for people to invest and to succeed.
With the expiration of the Bush tax cuts, every small business in America will get an automatic tax hike. And with President Obama planning to raise self-employment taxes, 2/3 of the nation's small business income may be taxed at a rate of 50%, according to Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform.
I think it's unusual to see a situation where a leading Democratic candidate like Barack Obama is calling for higher taxes and less free trade in a time of economic downturn.
Once Obama is elected, if he is elected in November and December, these markets are going to tank. Because every moron knows, if I sell my GM stock in November, I keep 85% of it. If I sell it in January, I keep 72% of it.
That was Herbert Hoover's policy in the 1930s, and it resulted in economic disaster. And of course, the result was an economic downward spiral that produced something like 25% unemployment, and produced a country where the economic gross domestic product was down 25% or more, a real economic cataclysm.
On his website, in speeches and debates, Senator Obama has suggested nearly 200 new and expanded programs that will have a 4-year cost of $1.2 trillion. Bill Clinton's 1993 tax increase raised $240 billion over 5 years. President Obama's new spending demands would require $300 billion every year. According to U.S. News and World Report, Senator Obama's proposed increase of Social Security taxes would be the largest tax hike in U.S. history.
You start taxing this economy in the ways that he has talked about, taxing income, taxing dividends, taxing corporations. He doesn't want to reduce the corporate tax. We have the 2nd or 3rd highest corporate tax in the industrialized world. And you're going to hobble this economy and seriously hobble this country.
This election, I think, will come down to whether or not we want to vote from the standpoint of what we saw in the showroom, all the glitter and the gear, or whether we really want to vote for what's going to perform out there on the road. Do we want a show horse, or do we want a workhorse? And I think most Americans want our country to work.
In addition to a liberal ideology on taxes, when you get past the hype, Senator Obama's position on illegal immigration would result in change most Americans oppose. Obama favors what he calls comprehensive immigration reform and a pathway to citizenship. In other words, some form of amnesty for the 12 to 20 million people who violated U.S. immigration laws.
His position on immigration, just like all these Democrats, is just outrageous because they're totally out of touch with the American people.
According to a Rasmussen poll, just 30% of Americans would favor legislation that focused exclusively on legalizing the status of undocumented workers already living in the United States.
Do you support driver's licenses for illegal immigrants? Senator Obama, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I am going to be fighting for comprehensive immigration reform.
The message that we're sending there is that somehow we want people to come in illegally and we'll reward them when they get here. So Obama has contributed to this magnet. I think that's a disservice to the country.
Clearly aware that illegal immigration is a hot-button issue for most Americans, Senator Obama has avoided taking a clear position on the issue of sanctuary cities, U.S. cities that refuse to enforce U.S. immigration laws and prohibit police departments from inquiring about immigration status.
To look at the impact with crime. These Latino gangs that just cause great havoc in places like California and Texas, and now you've seen them trickle down in places like the South.
And a sanctuary city policy can have deadly repercussions. In Los Angeles, in New York, Seattle, San Francisco, and in Senator Obama's own Chicago, law-abiding citizens have been the victims of crimes from illegal immigrant criminals who, once incarcerated, have not been reported to federal immigration authorities. Sanctuary indeed.
The federal law is not being enforced, not because of failures of local communities, because the federal government has not done the job that it needs to do.
But you would allow the sanctuary cities to exist?
What I would do as president is pass comprehensive immigration reform, and the federal government should be doing what it's supposed to be doing, which is controlling our borders.
Amnesty has been rejected by a majority of Americans. And while U.S. immigration policy does need reform, Obama's rhetoric on the subject of language and assimilation caught many off guard.
Instead of worrying about whether immigrants can learn English, they'll learn English. You need to make sure your child can speak Spanish.
We don't have to worry about people learning English. What we have to worry about is teaching our kids Spanish. Short-sighted, wrong, and again, tone-deaf. We do have to worry about people learning English. And in terms of our kids learning other languages, 85%, I can tell you this, I was the Secretary of Education, 85% of our kids are studying a foreign language in schools. American kids go abroad. This is not a problem.
We should have every child speaking more than one language. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing when Europeans come over here. They all speak English, they speak French, they speak German. And then we go over to Europe, and all we can say is, merci beaucoup.
There's a reason that English is an important language. It's because it's still the way a large part of the world does business. And his use of the term embarrassment in that connection, we should be embarrassed.
It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Suggests to me that there's a little embarrassment and not total pride in being an American, and that's a real problem.
In the Senate, Barack Obama voted to continue to support sanctuary cities with federal funds. He voted against English as the official language, and he voted to allow illegal immigrants to participate in Social Security. One more example of Senator Obama's desire to bring a liberal agenda to the White House and to your house is the issue of health care.
But if you're one of the 45 million Americans who don't have health insurance, you will have a new plan.
Obama says, let's expand the coverage, hope for savings, raise taxes to pay for it, and then struggle to reduce costs. The problem is that the most effective way to reduce healthcare costs is by rationing, by saying no, by telling a 78-year-old diabetic with high blood pressure who smokes, no, you may not have that bypass operation. You mean I need a second opinion? No, you may not have it. You mean I have to pay for it myself? No, if a doctor performs it, it's okay for him to perform an abortion, but if he gives you that bypass, he's going to lose his license. So in practice, what's going to happen is we will be taking health care away from American citizens who are old and giving it to illegal immigrants who are young.
He says that he's for families and the working individual, but then he talks about a centralized government program that hasn't worked in Canada, hasn't worked in England, that has actually taken the freedom from the consumer and limited the choices, and actually taken the quality of medical care downward.
Well, Obama seems to want us to have a larger public sector than we have now. A greater safety net, more government provision, or guarantee of health care finance. the government taking a much larger role in the healthcare sector of our economy.
President Obama will force the American public to pay for an unproven plan that will create billions in tax expenditures and drastically reduce the level of care. A plan that gives illegal immigrants the same health care that U.S. senators have. When the hype is stripped away, is that the kind of change we can believe in? Skyrocketing gas prices have focused the nation's attention on energy. Senator Obama's ideas about energy policy have raised questions about the kind of change he believes in.
We can't tell them don't grow. We can't drive our SUVs and, eat as much as we want and keep our homes on, 72 degrees at all times. And things that you can do individually, though, to save energy. Making sure your tires are properly inflated.
In 2007, Senator Obama introduced a bill that put the fringe environmental lobby ahead of America's energy security. To this day, the bill has no co-sponsors. Senator Obama has said no to nuclear energy, no to drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, has proposed taxing coal and natural gas, and has said no to a gas tax holiday. Senator Obama says that future oil production will not impact present prices. However, the Wall Street Journal and Harvard economist Martin Feldstein disagree, explaining that actions impacting future supply can impact present prices. But a surprise midsummer announcement from Barack Obama said more about the senator's politics than his policies.
Now the latest scheme is, we're going to drill offshore. Now, I want to be absolutely clear to everybody about this. If I thought that I could provide you some immediate relief on gas prices by drilling off the shores of California and New Jersey, I understand how desperate folks are. So if I thought that by drilling offshore we could solve our problem, I'd do it.
Senator Obama made those comments on the 30th of July. 2 days later, on the 1st of August, a USA Today Gallup poll said that 57% of Americans would be more likely to vote for a candidate who supported offshore drilling. That same day, just 2 days after making his no drilling comments, Senator Obama announced he would consider offshore drilling.
I actually did vote for the $87 billion before I voted against it.
Senator Obama has no serious energy plan. Does change we can believe in really mean change we can't afford? The Obamas have been given the gift of advocacy. However, when the hype is stripped away, it seems everyone does indeed have a price. The Obama campaign has set records with its fundraising. However, not all the donations are coming in $20 at a time. On April 6, 2008, Barack Obama was in San Francisco visiting the mansion of Ann and Gordon Getty on a street known as Billionaires Row. A close look at his donors reveals very little change from old-school politics.
Change.
Many are donors like the billionaire head of a Chicago-based hedge fund, whose employees and family members contributed nearly $200,000. At the same time, the firm was hiring lobbyists to secure a rich tax loophole. Obama's largest group of contributors is the employees and families of Wall Street giant Goldman Sachs. The senator has taken money from many special interest groups and employees of lobbying firms.
I am in this race to tell the corporate lobbyists that their days of setting the agenda in Washington are over. I have done more than any other candidate in this race to take on the lobbyists, and I have won. They have not funded my campaign, they will not work in my White House, and they will not drown out the voices of the American people when I am president.
Not according to the Washington Post. Bundlers and big money donors abound in the Obama campaign network. The New York Times reveals that the largest group of bundlers in the Obama campaign is lawyers. The campaign is also supported by 2006's Lobbyist of the Year.
I do not have federal registered lobbyists bundling for me, just like I don't take PAC money.
While a state senator, Barack Obama had a standing card game with a group of lobbyists every Wednesday night. During his 2004 campaign, Senator Obama regularly took money from lobbyists. USA Today reports that he helped secure grants for 16 institutions represented by 6 of his lobbyist contributors.
to offer change that we can believe in.
Contrary to the statement Senator Obama made at the Jefferson-Jackson dinner and all across the campaign trail, according to documents filed by his own campaign, 40 federally registered lobbyists have contributed to his presidential run. While on his April fundraising trip to Billionaires Row, Senator Obama's response to a question about small-town America blatantly demonstrated that he has never left his Chicago organizer roots.
You go into some of these small towns in Pennsylvania, like a lot of small towns in the Midwest, the jobs have been gone now for 25 years and nothing's replaced it. It's not surprising then that they get bitter and they cling to guns or religion or antipathy towards people who aren't like them, or anti-immigrant sentiment, or anti-trade sentiment, and a way to explain their frustrations.
If you read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, you'll find a quote that is almost exactly like that. He describes the middle class in those terms, that they cling to fixed illusory points which they believe are meaningful, that they cling to the American religion, they cling to a false patriotism, he says, a false nostalgia. He says that the middle classes are people who feel beleaguered on all sides. It's almost the same as what Obama is giving about rural and Christian voters in places like Pennsylvania. Obama's comments line up perfectly with Alinsky, who is such a huge influence in his life.
If he had made the comments about bitterness and clinging to guns and God before the Iowa caucus, he would never have won the Iowa caucus.
Thank you, Iowa. Thank you.
In other words, if only there was more government and more aid and more support, you wouldn't have the people turning to a position of the gun lobby and the position of the Bible lobby, according to Obama.
The ill-advised statement not only provides a peek at Senator Obama's misunderstanding of Middle America, it begs the question, what are his views on the Second Amendment?
When Senator Obama was just another left-wing politician from Illinois, he says his staff answered it for him, but I think he's responsible for it. He answered a questionnaire where he came out for the most extreme form of gun registration.
Senator Obama, the District of Columbia has a law. It's had a law since 1976. It's now before the United States Supreme Court. Is that a law consistent with an individual's right to bear arms?
As a general principle, I believe that the Constitution confers an individual right to bear arms.
And in 1996, your campaign issued a questionnaire, and your writing was on the questionnaire that said you favored a ban on handguns.
No, my writing wasn't on that particular questionnaire, Charlie. As I said, I have never favored all-out ban on handguns.
Counter to his claims in the debate, the 1996 questionnaire asked if he supported banning the sale, manufacture, and possession of handguns. Obama answered yes. Also contradicting his statements, it was later revealed that the questionnaire did have his handwriting and notes on it. Prior to the Supreme Court ruling in the D.C. gun ban case, Senator Obama said sportsmen should have the right to hunt and shoot, but that handgun bans were constitutional. Then, in a confusing twist, when the Supreme Court sided with individual rights for gun ownership, Obama agreed with both sides.
You had mentioned that the D.C. handgun law was constitutional. Now you're embracing the Supreme Court's 5-4 decision, striking down that law.
That's not what I said back in November. So,
your aide had mentioned something about that.
Well, I don't know what my aide said, but I've been very consistent. I teach constitutional law. What I said was that I believe in the Second Amendment as being an individual right, and have said that consistently.
Senator Obama represents change that may be a big concern to America's nearly 80 million gun owners. There are other areas where Senator Obama presents a clear record of his thoughts and his liberal agenda. Early in the campaign, Senator Obama advocated that states should make the decision about gay rights and the definition of marriage. However, in June of 2008, Michelle Obama clearly outlined her husband's positions on the Defense of Marriage Act and other gay issues.
Barack went on record during his U.S. Senate race calling for its complete repeal. And as a U.S. Senator, he voted to protect our Constitution from the stain of discrimination by voting against the federal marriage amendment. Barack believes that we must fight for the world as it should be, a world where together we work to reverse discriminatory laws like DOMA and Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
When the California Supreme Court struck down the voter initiative against gay marriage, the candidate who pleads that every vote matters supported the court's decision over the decision of over 60% of the people of California. Just as Senator Obama's liberal agenda pitted him against many Californians, his far-left politics and policies often pit him against many Americans. Nowhere is this more evident than his position on life.
Change is a slogan. Change will take time, but change we can believe in.
I got my nursing degree when I was in my mid-30s. I applied to work at only one hospital, Christ Hospital, on the southwest side of Chicago. I came to work one night and I heard and report that we were aborting a second trimester baby that night who had Down syndrome. I found out that the method of abortion is called induced labor abortion, and this method of abortion sometimes results in babies being aborted alive. When a nursing coworker told me that the baby had lived and that she was taking the baby to our soiled utility room to die because his parents didn't want to hold him and she didn't have time to hold him that night. And when she told me what she was doing, I couldn't bear the thought of this suffering child dying alone, and so I cradled and rocked him for the 45 minutes that he lived. And I remember toward the end of his life, I couldn't tell if he was alive or not unless I held him up against the light to see if I could see his heart beating through his chest wall because their skin is so thin at that age. And after he was pronounced dead, we crossed his little arms across his chest and tied them together with a little string. And we took him to the morgue where we took all of our other dead patients. I was instantly catapulted into becoming a pro-life activist. We approached State Senator Patrick O'Malley, who was coincidentally a board member at Christ Hospital.
I was serving as a member of the advisory board, so and I thought the world of Christ Hospital. They still are a vital provider of medical services in our community. We work with the Attorney General's office and came forward with a package of legislation to challenge this activity. It became known as the Born Alive infant protection laws.
Barack Obama was the sole senator who spoke against Born Alive, encouraging his colleagues not to vote for it. The bill in 2001 ultimately failed. It was reintroduced in 2002. And again, he was the sole senator speaking against this bill on the Senate floor. He thought that declaring aborted alive babies, children, or legal persons would impinge upon Roe v. Wade and overturn Roe v. Wade. But in between 2001 and 2002, on the federal level, the Born Alive bill passed.
The support for it in the U.S. Senate was 98 yes votes and no votes.
Hillary Clinton voted for it. Ted Kennedy spoke in favor of the bill on the floor.
Barbara Boxer, as an example, made it perfectly clear that any child born deserved the protections of a U.S. citizen.
NARAL went neutral on the bill on the federal level. And this was the same bill that was in the state of Illinois.
Senator Obama in Illinois was opposed to this very proposition. I mean, adamantly proposed. He was the guy who led the effort against it. If you just